available to folks later on. We also have some colleagues here who are going to help in the chat. So at any time while we're presenting, please feel free to jump in there and ask any questions that you may have. And then we'll also leave time at the end for Q&A if anyone wants to ask their questions then or continue to use the chat to do so. So we're going to jump right in here. Here you can see an agenda of things we'd like to try to cover. We'll go through each of these sections as quickly as we can. We don't want to just talk to you all night. We'd rather have back and forth and answer questions that you may have. But here are the topic areas that we'd like to try to cover. So first and foremost, we want to make sure you are able to get in touch with us, and we'll have contact information on the slide at the end as well so that you can reach out to our different various offices if you have questions. Here you can find our financial aid information. So we are you'd like to. We're one of the few offices around that I think use fax machines still, and that's because we have a lot of need for confidential documentation to be sent. So we'll use faxes once in a while for that, and then you can see our email address there. We just always ask that you never use email to send us any documentation that you may need to send, and that's because email is not an encrypted method of transmission. So if you have to send us tax records or anything that contains your personal information, you want to be careful not to use email to do that. And for any evening when you're having trouble falling asleep, there's a couple of web links you can see there where you'll be able to find all of our general policies and important rules that you may want to be aware of. It's generally a good idea to have awareness of those, to take a look at them at some point. There's a lot of information, however, so you want to go through it. You don't necessarily have to know all the specifics, but knowing where that is and knowing that there are specific rules and policies you need to be aware of is important. So some really important tips as we get started, and this is going to be something that I think is true for all of the offices on campus. First and foremost, please make sure as a student that you are regularly checking your email. And by email, I mean the @syr.email address that you've set up. As an EF student, you will also have an Esf.edu address, but as far as official communication from the college is concerned, we use the syr.email notice, billing notice, all of those communications are going to go to that email address. And also remember that goes to the student and not to the parent. So if you are trying to make sure that your parents have that information, make sure you forward that along to them as needed. Also a good idea to check your information in our self-service portal, which you can see the address for there. We just call that My ESF. Hopefully you're all able to get into that already, and I'll give some information about that as we go through the presentation here. But a good idea to always keep an eye on both your financial aid and your billing information there, as well as all of the other important information that you'll find, which could include course information and other profile info that we provide. So this one I'm going to go really quick on because I'm guessing most people are already finished with this process. And this is just a reminder about the different financial aid applications that need to be completed each year as you try to get financial aid. So first, well, you don't have to do the admissions application. That one we used automatically for merit-based scholarship consideration. But then each year you want to make sure you get your FAFSA submitted as soon as possible after it's released each year, which is typically October 1. And then the TAP application, if you're a New York State resident, you would want to do through the Higher Education Services Corporation. One of the big questions we get is how to make sure that you're going to be considered for your state grant program funding, which is TAP program predominantly. And it's always important to remember to do that application separately from the FAFSA. You can usually do them kind of together, but they are indeed separate applications. So if you're looking at financial aid and you're seeing either a TAP grant or something called a SUNY tuition credit that are not listed as accepted or confirmed, that could be an indication that you haven't done that application yet. So those are the three big steps along the way. Now into how we communicate about our financial aid packages. So for anyone who's selected for a merit scholarship, we would have already mailed out paper offer letters for those with all of the details. It's a good idea to keep those letters handy as you go through your years at ESF so that you can always refer back to that to make sure you're aware of any of the requirements that might exist. So GPA requirements or enrollment limits and things of that nature. We will also put together a full financial aid package, which would include any merit scholarships that we'd offer and also include any other institutional funding that we may have put together, and then also federal and state aid that we think the student may be eligible to receive. So as we go through that process, we'll create the full financial aid package, and I'm guessing most of you have already received that and been able to view that. That will be available in the My ESF portal. We would also send one initial paper copy of the financial aid package, and that's just so you know the information is there. But from that point forward, everything is done electronically just through the portal. And honestly, if you're looking to get the most in-depth information, looking at the portal is really the best way to do that, because the paper version is just a one-page summary, and the portal gives you all of the additional details that you may need to be aware of. Again, we're using the SYR email address to send you notifications once an aid package is available, or if we've made changes to your aid package, and then you would access that anytime right through that My ESF portal. So if you have not accessed your financial aid package, or if you had any kind of trouble getting into your account, these are the steps you've probably already gone through, but you may want to be aware of in order to create your account. So as an applicant to ESF, you've been using what we call the applicant portal, where you've been taking care of your admissions activities. To get into the main My ESF portal to view your billing and your financial aid package, you want to make sure you've created your ESF ID. And don't worry too much about all the text here. This is text that will be available to you anytime you need it through that applicant portal that you can see linked there. So if you haven't yet created your ESF ID, you want to go in and use these instructions to do that. And then once you've created the ESF ID, which is basically your ESF username and the password that you select, that is what you will then use to get into the My ESF portal. So here you can see the next step on creating the ESF ID. One quick note with this, password rules are very particular. And one of the biggest things we see when students are having trouble with their ESF ID is that they haven't followed all of those different password rules that are there. And you also need to make sure you've reviewed the policies about electronic communications and so forth as you create that ESF ID. So once you've done that, this is the sign-in view for the My ESF portal, where you can go to that address you see there. There are also links all over our website to get you to this point. If you have trouble, so you're trying to sign in, your ESF ID is not working, or you're having password issues or anything similar, you'll notice the link there to the ESF help desk. This is through our Computing and Network Services office. They are the folks that can help you with resetting a password or making sure you're following those rules, or just generally reviewing any access problems that might come up. Once you get into the My ESF portal, you're going to see a series of links along the left-hand side, or if you're using a mobile device, which is not really the best way, honestly, to get in and view this information, but this set of links would be available on a mobile device under what they call the hamburger menu, which is the three lines, one on top of each other, which you can click to open up that menu. On the main website version of this, all of these links are along the left-hand side. So you can see if you're looking to get your financial aid information, you can click the one that's highlighted in red. If you're looking for billing information, you want to use the one that says student account, just a couple links below that. And keep in mind that these are very different sets of information. So both very important, but when you're looking for details about how much money you owe to the college or what your charges are, then you want to look at student account. When you're looking for what's in your financial aid package, including estimated costs, that's when you look at financial aid information.
Can I add
Yes,
something?
absolutely.
So under student account, not only is your bill there, but that's where you go to make payments as well as sign up for the installment plan. So there's more to that section than just your bill, just so you know. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so when you start in the financial aid section, hopefully many of you have already done this. This might look familiar. If not, there's a few things I would just like to cover to make sure you're comfortable with what we're putting out there. So anytime you go to that financial aid link, you're going to start in this financial aid portal or financial aid section of our overall portal. One thing to note is all of the tabs along the top. which can get you to different sections of your financial aid information. To be very honest, in most cases, you're probably only going to need the first two tabs, so the Home tab and the Award Offer tab. Other tabs can give some helpful information from time to time, but honestly, for anything important you're going to be looking at, it's those first two that you'd want to be using. Every time you come to this site, it's going to start you on this Home tab. And this is basically going to provide you what we call a to-do list or a list of requirements that you have associated with just your financial aid. So there could be other tasks you may have in the portal from time to time you want to be aware of, but for anything financial aid specific, this is where you want to look. And this is also a place you want to go from time to time because this changes in real time based on actions we may have taken or actions you may have taken. So this is not a fixed set of information. This will vary what it displays. So as you can see in this example here, this student has a couple questions that we've asked that we would like to get answers to, but the green, which means a good thing, shows that we've received this student's FAFSA for this school year. So again, good to always go back to this page to look at any kind of requirements that you may have outstanding. A couple of those questions that were referenced on that previous screen that I just like to highlight very briefly because they tend to add some confusion to the process for students. And these are the questions we ask, which are basically federal regulations, which make sure we're using your financial aid money properly. So in the regulations, it says that we can use financial aid generally to cover any of your standard expenses at ESF. So we can automatically use financial aid funds to help pay for your tuition or your housing charges and anything else that might appear on your ESF bill, with a few exceptions. So in those regulations, we have to make sure we've asked you if you would like to authorize us to use your financial aid funds, your federal financial aid funds, for any of those other special expenses. And we have very, very few of those, if any. A good example of those types of expenses might be if you have a parking ticket, say, or a library fine for an overdue book, which we really don't put on a bill. And I don't think we have those for the most part anyway. But if you've authorized us to do so, we can use federal aid to pay those automatically. If you don't want us to do that, you could say, no, we do not authorize us to do that. The other question is that we can actually do this for past year charges as well if you authorize us to do so. So this could be if you're doing your financial aid for a current year and you had a late charge added to your account, say for a parking ticket or a library fine or something similar. If you've authorized it, we can take aid from that current year to go back to pay that balance from the previous year. So we recommend that you authorize these because most families and students want the bill to be paid with financial aid, but you can say no to that if you'd like to do so. Again, it's very, very rare that we even have any of these charges, so it's not a factor for most families. It's really not going to hurt you in any way, whatever answer you give. The other thing there you see is all of our terms and conditions, and this is a lot of detail about what types of GPA you need to maintain to keep your financial aid, details of that nature. So as you go in and interact with a financial aid package for the first time, whether you're trying to provide responses or you're just saying, yes, I've seen this and confirming that, the terms and conditions will come up for you to review and then agree to. Another quick note on here to be aware of is if you need to get us documentation that contains personal information, rather than emailing it to us, you can use our document upload feature. And there's a link down there where it says upload requested documents. If you click that, that will take you to the location where you can elect to upload documentation to us that will be then kept in a secure location for us to access. So now that you've reviewed your list of requirements, and again, go back and review that often if you can, the award offer tab is really where all of the important financial aid information is going to be listed. So when you get here, the first thing you're going to see is just some general information about profile status information, what type of enrollment we're expecting you to have, what your housing status is expected to be, your information from the FAFSA. But then we are going to jump into what we call the cost of attendance. So hopefully most of you have seen this already. The cost of attendance is a budget basically of estimated expenses that we think you're going to have for 1 year of enrollment. So you'll see in the big bold there at the top of this slide, this is not your bill. So one of the most common sources of confusion we get is when you look at your financial aid package, if you start to look at the cost of attendance information and you try to equate that to a bill, then you're going to get some confusion as to what you really owe the college and what those numbers represent. The reason that can be confusing is because first we're using estimates of these expenses in the cost of attendance, and some of the expenses we use are not going to be on any kind of bill. So examples of those might be personal expenses, books and supplies, and so forth. So typically the expenses listed in this cost of attendance are going to be broken up into either billable or non-billable items, or you might also see it sometimes as direct and indirect expenses. And the basic difference there is a billable item is something we expect you would see on a bill, either from ESF or potentially from Syracuse University if you have a meal plan through them. Non-billable or indirect expenses are those items that we can give you financial aid to help with, but that are not necessarily going to be on a bill. So on the start here, you can see we have some direct expenses for the student tuition and fees, which we will be billing for. Then we get into this student who is an off-campus student and the non-billable items. So you can see we have transportation costs that we've estimated, housing for off-campus, food, personal expenses, and so forth. One of the big questions we always get is, why do you have housing and food in the cost of attendance when I'm not going to be living on campus? You're not going to bill me. Why are those listed there? And that is simply because we can give you financial aid to help with those expenses regardless of where you choose to live. So whether you're living in campus housing or an apartment off campus or even living at home with parents, we can still give you funds to help with those living expenses. So that's why those are included here. So after you get through the cost of attendance, and you'll see we're going to total up all of those expenses for you. So there could be a range of expenses there depending on whether the student is in state, out of state, what type of housing there is, and so forth. So we're going to total up all of that cost of attendance information and give you one lump sum number, which is basically our estimate of costs for the year. Next, we're going to list for you all the different grants and scholarships that you may have eligibility for this year. So you can see different examples of types of grants and scholarships there. Make a note that we list it for the fall and spring semester and then give you the total. Right? When it comes to the billing process, you'll see that the billing is done by semester specifically. And that's because enrollment each semester is not known. So obviously your bill could change based on the choices you make each semester. So we are basically assuming for most students they will be full-time for the school year. And these are the types of aid that we can offer. So we're then going to total up all of those grants and scholarships there. So in this example, you can see that's the negative number listed there, negative 13,919. This is the sum of the annual amount of all the grants and scholarships listed there. The reason that's listed as a negative is because basically what we're doing then is subtracting that total of your quote unquote free money, and we're subtracting that from your total cost of attendance. And that gets us to what we call the net cost. So as close as we can get to the question of what's it really going to cost me for a year of school, that's that net cost. Just again, keep in mind that this is all based on estimates of your expenses and the amounts that we have listed for the grants and scholarships there. Next, what we're going to do is provide what we call the self-help financial aid information. And these are the different sources of aid that you have to decide if you'd like to use or not. So in this example, we have offered this student work study, which is an employment program for students. And you can see the student has accepted this. And we've also offered some loan funds, which in this case, they have declined. In most cases, if you look at the different loans and work study options available there, the total of those should equal up to that net cost amount that we listed on the previous slide. So when you look at that net cost, in this case, the loans were declined, but if you add those all up, in most cases, those are going to be equal. So the idea here is between all of the free money and the self-help money, if you decide to take all of that, that should be enough to cover the amounts listed in the cost of attendance. So that's where you have to make all those decisions of, do I want to borrow? How much? Do you want to include all the expenses that we do in the cost of attendance when you're making your plans, and so forth. Here's another way you can view the financial aid information. This is similar to the paper version that we would send out to everyone that first time. This is something you can access from the College Financing Plan tab in the portal. There's also another version of this, which is actually a little bit better, which is right on the Award Offers tab, and it's a link that's just on the upper right side, which talks about the SUNY award letter. And you can click that one to view this version as well. That's how you can download a PDF version of this if you need it for any purpose, and it will summarize all of the same information for you. So a couple different ways you can view your info. So some brief numbers that you are likely to be seeing in the financial aid packages. These are our cost of attendance numbers for this current year. Again, these are the estimates that we're using for most students. One little quick note on this that can be helpful. If you have expenses that you think are essential expenses for going to college that we have not considered, there's a process you can go through to have a review done of this. So the most common reasons for this are often housing costs. So say, for example, you're living off campus and the amount we've estimated is less than what your rent actually turns out to be. You could submit to us a copy of your lease. We could review that and potentially adjust the amount we have in your financial aid package for the housing estimate. So a lot of ways that can be adjusted if needed. Most students find they don't need to do that and that the estimates are sufficient. But if you have something that's drastically different, then we might be able to help with that. All right, so this is one of those slides where there's a lot of text on here, but I would say please don't feel you have to read all of this. I'll kind of summarize this. This is where I'd say, Michelle, if you want to jump in with any kind of billing information that I'm missing, please feel free to do so. So first and foremost, when we get to the whole process of billing and financial aid money, how you get that, how you use that, and so forth. These are kind of the important pieces here. So again, it's really important to know that anything you see in the financial aid package is not meant to be a bill. So when you go to look at all that information, please don't get misled into thinking, hey, I need to pay a certain amount that I see here. That's when you want to look at the bill instead. Everything in the aid package is providing estimated information. With regards to billing, that basically happens at the start of each semester. So for our new first year students, most of the time, there's going to be two separate bills. One bill from ESF, which would be for tuition and fees and housing charges in Centennial Hall. And then there's a separate bill that would be sent to the student from Syracuse University for whatever specific meal plan the student has selected. So good to note here that for new first year students, on-campus housing is required unless there's been some sort of waiver or the student's living with parents locally. And when living on campus, the students have to select a meal plan through Syracuse University. Another neat note here, when you look at your cost of attendance information, you'll see for food estimates, we've included in many cases an amount that's significantly higher than the meal plan cost that you may select. And that's because federal rules require us to put enough funding in your aid package to cover all of your meals for 3 meals a day, 7 days a week while you're in school. So a lot of our students find that when they actually go to select a meal plan, they're choosing something different, which may have a different cost than what we've listed in the aid package, and that can lead to some savings for you. As the bills come out, most of the financial aid funds will be applied automatically to your bill at the time of disbursement. So as we get to the first day of classes for each semester is when funds will start to disperse, meaning they actually go into your student account and apply towards your charges. Prior to that point, you're going to see funds listed as pending financial aid. And that's an important thing to be aware of. Pending financial aid is basically aid that we expect you're going to receive, but that can't actually disperse into your billing account until classes have started. So as the semester starts, we'll start to do disbursement of the funds into the billing accounts. That is when officially those funds will be used to cover those charges on your ESF bill as much as possible. In a lot of cases for our students, they may find that they have financial aid in excess of what's on their ESF bill. This doesn't always happen as commonly in first years, but for students who have moved off campus, in particular in future years, they may have an ESF bill that only has tuition and fees included. And if they have accepted enough financial aid to cover not only tuition and fees, but also housing expenses, the aid may be more than what the ESF bill lists. And in those cases, what's going to happen is the bursar's office will take any of that aid money needed first for the ESF charges, and then they're going to refund anything left over back to the student and or parent if there's a parent's loan, depending on the preferences and their procedures. And once you have that refund money, then you can use that to pay for any other expenses that you might have. So your SU bill for the meal plan, or any books that you need to buy, or personal expenses that you may have. So the refund process can be very important for our students to be aware of, so that they know that that excess money will get to them so they can use it for those other purposes.
Can I just add something before you go on?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's related to the question in the chat. So your bill is due before the pending aid or your financial aid has posted to your account. So what we recommend you do is you take your total charges, you subtract out your pending aid, and if there's still an amount due, just pay that amount, and then you won't be assessed any late fees. If your financial aid is more than your charges, once we start running the refund process, which is usually after classes start, then you'll get that amount back as a refund. And I'll talk more about refunds coming up later.
Great. Thanks. All right. So I want to talk just briefly about the federal work study program, because this can create some questions as well. So important thing to know if you've been offered work study as part of a financial aid package. One is that this is part of the federal aid programs, which requires that a student has financial need as determined through our formulas to be eligible for this program. So not all students that want to participate in work study are able to do so, but a lot are indeed able to do so. One quick note with this: if you are interested in work study, but you do not see that included in your financial aid package, you can reach out to us to check on possible eligibility, because not all students get offered this program, even if they may be eligible. And that's because we don't often have enough money to cover everyone who may be interested. But if you reach out and you have eligibility, we may be able to offer that into your aid package for you. The goal of the program is strictly to provide more job opportunities than we'd otherwise have available for our students. So we're basically receiving federal money to be able to pay wages, and we are supposed to create job opportunities for our students with that funding. We're a little bit unique compared to some other schools in that we do have a summer work study program. So if you're a student who might be looking for summer employment and want to do that through the college, there are some opportunities to do so in any summer prior to when you're expected to be enrolled. So this is based on financial need, like I mentioned, and it's awarded as a grant within your financial aid package. One important thing to know here, though, is that you don't get this money paid towards your bill like you would with other financial aid sources. So this is never going to be a credit that's going to reduce the charge on the ESF bill. Instead, the amount you see listed for a work study grant basically represents a pool of funds that we can draw from to pay your wages if you get a job through the work study program. So from a student and family point of view, a job in one of our work study program jobs is no different from a job at a local restaurant or the mall or working for Syracuse University. You're going to get a paycheck based on the hours you put in and your wage rate. And then when you get that paycheck, you can use it for whatever you want to. The one big difference with the work study is that the grant amount you see represents the maximum you could earn through the school year in your work study job. I also like to make a couple notes about the New York State aid sources for our New York State residents. So I mentioned before about the TAP and the SUNY tuition credit. We get a lot of questions on this. When you're looking in your financial aid package, you may see that these two awards are listed as offered. And when you try to accept them like you would something else in the aid package, you'll get a message that says you can't do that because they're locked and you need to contact the school. Those are locked because these awards only update based on the processing of your state aid application. So when you do the TAP application, New York State will review that and determine if you're eligible for funding through TAP and the SUNY tuition credit. And once that process happens, they will send us the results, and we will then automatically load that into our systems, and that will update the status of those awards. So if you're looking in your aid package and you see that those are offered and locked, that could be an indication that you have not completed the TAP application, or if you did, there may be issues with that, errors, or one of the most common things would be that you haven't listed ESF as the school on that application, so we're not receiving the information. So if you see that as the case, we can help you get in touch with the Higher Education Services Corporation, or you can go back to where you did your TAP application to check the status on that. If we have folks who have applied for the Excelsior Scholarship, keep in mind that that's a separate application. So the first time you apply for that program, you have to do that application. Once you're in the program, however, you do not need to do a separate application each year. You just need to make sure you do the TAP application each year as normal. If you are in this program, a couple of things to be aware of. First and foremost, and most importantly with this, is the rules about credit hour completion for our students. So in order to maintain eligibility for the Excelsior Scholarship, you have to make sure that for each year of school, you have earned on average at least 30 credits that are applicable towards your degree that you're enrolled in at the college for each year. So example there is you could take 15 credits in the fall that are towards your degree, 15 credits in the spring. As long as you successfully earn all of those, you would have your 30 credits and you'd be all set to go. If you are short of that and you're at 29 credits and you haven't finished any more by the end of the school year, which could include summer, we would have to decertify your award and you would lose the spring portion and be out of the program. So it's really important right from the start, if you're in the Excelsior Scholarship, to be aware of what credit hours you're enrolling for and whether or not they meet your degree requirements, and make sure you, as you register for courses, that you're getting enough to meet those requirements. Also, something that can lead to some confusion. Don't forget that the Excelsior Scholarship is what they call a last dollar scholarship. So that means it's meant to cover up to the SUNY tuition amount, which is $7,070 currently, but that's after other grants and scholarships are deducted. So if you receive the federal Pell Grant, or you receive a TAP grant, or many different types of outside scholarships or institutional scholarships, most of those will be deducted from that 7,070 first. And then if anything remains after that, that's what the Excelsior Scholarship will provide. So if you have a lot of other grants and scholarships, sometimes it can be a surprise where you could be in the program, but you may see $0 values for that scholarship as to what it actually offers to you. So kind of putting us all together. I know I showed you a lot of screens and talked about a lot of information you're going to get out on our portal and so forth. Some things that may help you as you go through this process. First is, I think it's a good idea anyway, to create your own budget of what your expenses are going to be. So you can certainly start with the cost of attendance that we provide, but a lot of families we talk to find that they don't want to include things like personal expenses or transportation costs or some of those other non-billable expenses when they're thinking about expenses and what they might want to borrow to help cover those. So don't be afraid to create your own budget based on our estimates or the known items that you know. So for example, if you know exactly what your rent is going to be for the year, use that in your budgeting process instead of the amount that we've estimated. Once you have a budget put together, then compare all the total resources you have. So the financial aid that we've offered, what you're going to be borrowing, what you might have out of pocket, or if you have a 529 plan, make sure that those resources are equal to that budget that you've created. And if you can get yourself to that point, you're going to be ready to go in terms of covering all those expenses. Make sure you're properly comparing and looking at what your net cost is going to be. Again, so when you look at the financial aid package, be aware that the net cost is strictly the difference between the cost of attendance and the free money, the gift aid that we include in the financial aid package. So you can adjust based on your review of that. Make sure you're well aware of what's included in the aid package when it comes to free money versus the self-help money, right? So we try to separate that and make that very clear, but make sure you know which is which, and make sure as you make your loan decisions or work study decisions that you know what the cost of doing that would be. If you have work study included in your aid package, make sure that it's reasonable for you. If you don't want to use work study, that's okay. You can decline that. But if you don't have work study in the aid package, that could mean that the amount you could take out in parent or federal student loans might be higher. So you can adjust based on those decisions as well. Really important for our students, make sure you know all of the requirements for the scholarships you have. You'll see that in the terms and conditions and in your initial scholarship letters. So know what GPA you need to maintain and make sure you know what kind of enrollment you have to have, full-time, half-time, whatever it might be. And then if you're seeking out outside sources of funding, which we certainly encourage you to do, just be aware of how that might impact other sources of aid. We have a general institutional policy that we're not going to reduce other sources of funding unless we have to do so by rule. But in particular, with some of that state aid like Excelsior, outside sources of funding certainly could reduce what you might get from some of those other sources. All right, and last minute reminders from my end of things here. Again, make sure you're checking your email regularly. That's one of the most important things we want to stress because a lot of students can forget to do that and then they might miss important notices that are coming out. If you are living on campus, which our first years mostly would be, make sure that you are well aware that the Syracuse University meal plan bill comes directly from them. And we are not allowed to send financial aid funds to them to pay that bill for you. So that's why instead you would be issued a refund if you have excess financial aid, and you as a student are responsible to make sure that SU bill gets paid. We cannot pay that for you. If you haven't updated your applications, make sure you have ESF on there. And again, the Excelsior recipients, make sure you know all the rules about the credit requirements that you may have. So I think I will now, Michelle, turn it over to you in case you have any other billing items you wanted to cover that I missed.
No, but can you flip to your contact uh, slide? Because I don't have any slides. I just want to show them.
Yep.
It was in the beginning.
Oh, you want my I don't have yours on that slide, but
No, but I wanted to show them.
okay.
Yeah, right there. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry I don't have any slides, but financial aid is right down the hall from the bursar's office. We are 103 Gray, they're 113 Gray. So we're real close. We talk all the time, all day, every day. Our phone number is it's 315-470-6652. And our email is really easy, bursar@esf.edu. I'm not sure how many of you are aware. I'm sure you are by now, but fall bills went out Monday on July 15th. They are due on August 15th. On on the portal where you in Banner where you can go to student accounts, that's where you view your bill. And you will also be able to make any payments there, and you can sign up for the installment plan. The installment plan is a $35 application fee. And if you sign up for it by August 15th, it's broken down into 4 installments. If you wait till after the first due date, you lose an installment and you're down to 3. And that happens with every due date. The bill is due on the 15th of every month. For any outstanding balances you may have. I do want to mention along the lines of refunds that we use a third-party company to process our refunds. Their name is Bank Mobile. You may have started receiving emails, regular mail from them. It's a legitimate company. We highly recommend you read those messages and pick a preference. And by picking a preference, selecting your preference is you just give them a bank account information where you want the funds to be deposited into. When we send them a refund file, if you have a preference set up, you have a preference set up, sorry. Within 24 to 48 hours, you'll have the money in your bank account. And then you could go ahead and pay your rent. You can pay the SU meal plan. If you do not select a preference, what they do is they hold that money for 21 days and then they send a paper check. Chances are sometimes it gets mailed to the wrong address. It's mailed to the address we have on file. Sometimes people move and forget to change their address. Sometimes they lose the check. And then there's quite a bit of a delay to get it reissued. So we highly recommend set up a preference, you get your money a lot faster. The name of that company is Bank Mobile. The installment plans, find out address, to figure out how much you owe. If you owe anything, like I said earlier, you take your total charges, you subtract out the pending aid, and that would be your amount, either amount due or the amount you'll be getting back as a refund. We do not process refunds until after classes start. So if you're looking at your account now and you see that you're getting a refund, we won't be doing those until late August, early September. Just a quick note about Syracuse University. They do bill directly for the meal plans. They will email the student the invoice. They do not send out paper bills. The email is going out on September 23rd, and those bills are due on October 14th. This information that I have just given you, it's all in the email that was sent out on Monday when we let the students know that their bills have been posted to their student portal. Please check your emails. First year students, the emails were sent to your personal email because we don't have your Esf.edu email yet. Once you set that up, but going forward, all of our communication will be going to that email. And as Mark said, it's very important to keep checking the email because we send out very important information. Sometimes there's deadlines and it's great information. We try not to send any information too often because I know you get overwhelmed with email as we do too. So we only send out the very important information for you. One more item too. There is every student has the ability to drop classes after the semester starts. But as a note, you can check out our Bursar webpage. After the first week, if you drop a class, there is a liability on the class that you drop. It starts out at 30%, and every week it increases. It'll be 50%, then 70%, and then after the fourth week, you're 100% liable for dropping the class. So if you are seriously considering dropping, I suggest dropping it in the first week. That way you're not liable for it at all. And those are the major questions we seem to get. I know it was kind of fast. Anybody have any questions?
Michelle, there's one in the chat.
If we're not paying our bill directly, please add someone. Yes, so in the student account, when you're viewing your bill, when you click on view or pay your bill, you can add a user, a payee, and you can give them permission to see your bill and make payments on your behalf. And the installment plans, they're all electronic. You go right into that same portal and you sign up for it electronically, and they send reminders as well.
Okay. I think I'm going to stop my sharing right now. So hopefully you've seen the contact information there. I believe we were going to stop the recording at this point as well.